Welcome. It is time to talk about RBU. Are we back? We're going to talk about biggest storylines, superlatives, and we're going to grade the running back room for this year and going forward into the future on Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Making this your first listen every day. We really do appreciate it. Time's an important thing, and getting a little bit of your time is amazing, so thank you. Today's episode brought to you by Monopoly Go. Fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes, unique stickers, cool playing pieces, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. Download Monopoly Go now on Google Play or the App Store for free. Game on. All right, Justin. Running backs. We did the quarterback one the other day. I know you guys have gone through your depth charts as well and your spring thoughts on your show on the Bucky Report. I want to start. This will be just like the quarterback rundown I did yesterday. I want to start with the depth chart quick. You have Tawee, Walker, Chez, Mellusi are the seniors. Grover Bortolotti is the junior. Cade, Yacamelli, the sophomore in the room. Redshirt freshman Nate White. You still have Jackson Acker as well, who could play a couple different spots at running back. And then the true freshman, you got that triplet of Dilin Jones, Gideon Ituka, Darrion, Dupree. I'm going to start with this question, Justin. Biggest storyline from spring at the running back spot?
Tawee Walker. Flat out sounds like we found one with him, and I think I don't know about you. He's the guy I expect to actually have the highest yardage total out of this group this year. I'm big on him. I just think that he's a guy, he's the closest to a bell cow out of the group. I think that he can take more punishment than anybody else.
Yeah, he can definitely do that.
It sounds like his skill set's better than what we expected.
I've always been kind of sneaky high on him. Not to say I expected all the superlatives we heard. And that kind of came from talking to the Oklahoma guy before he got here. And he said, Tawee, you're going to love him. He's a fan favorite. He's really good. Runs really hard. So I would agree with you. I think that is the biggest storyline. I don't think he's going to have the highest yardage total. I think he's probably better suited as a change of pace thumper. But a really good number two. And someone who's going to help a lot this year. Probably someone who's going to vulture a lot of touchdowns, quite frankly.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be the guy that you trust more on the goal line. For all Chez's positive aspects, he's not a guy that I want running between the tackles, having to pick up yardage.
Yep. Do you feel better or worse coming out from where you started spring to right now about the running back?
I feel better. It's not close. It sounds like there's been some promising things said about Yacamelli, about Acker. Ituka sounds like he had a pretty good camp, and I think that's what we expected from him, was to find out that he was probably going to put himself in a really good position to get some snaps this year. I think it's there. It'll be really interesting to see how the depth chart jostles out after this fall camp based off of what we're seeing, because I think we know the top two guys. Who ends up being slotted number 3? Can the other two guys get in there and push, which I think you and I are both super high on them. Like, those two are the two highest ceilings, probably maybe on the entire roster when they come in terms of the running backs. Can they hit some of that right off the get-go, or is it going to be something that is going to take them a little time to get it to start showing?
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel better too. And I'll take better for a different reason. I think Tawee is a big part that we talked about being probably a little better than we expected. Chez is also healthy, right? And things can happen in spring. Like, you can get nicked up, or we saw that last year with players coming in and then they couldn't make it through spring because they were nursing something. Sounds like Chez is ahead of where he needs to be. Physically feels good. I think that's another reason to be optimistic about this. We're going underrated storyline for the running back, something we're not talking about. I'll lead off here. For me, it's the depth. I think sneakily this might be the deepest positional group on the team when the freshmen get here. Because I like all the freshmen. I like Gideon Ituka. I think he's underrated. You and I both like Tawee Walker. I think Chez, when healthy, even if we vary a little bit on his upside, we both think he's at least a good running back. And I think situationally, Yacamelli and Acker can both play as well. I think this is a really, really deep room. And I think when people talk about it, they're always like, they always think it's a shallow room because Chez keeps getting hurt, right? And what happens if Chez gets hurt? I'm like, I don't know. I think there's freshmen. I think there's Tawee. I think Cade Yacamelli can play a little. I think Acker can play a little. I think it's a pretty deep room.
I don't think that they would be hard-pressed to find somebody who can be effective at all if he goes down. I think Dilin Jones is going to be ready to play when he comes in. Now, do I expect him to absolutely light it up as a true freshman? Maybe not that, but I think he can be productive. Like he's one of the better backs that we've probably brought in the last 10 years. And I think Dupree is too. So just looking at it from that context, both of those guys, if they were forced into duty, I'd feel comfortable with them being out there. Are they going to get 6-7 yards of carry? Probably not, but do I think they could get 5? Yeah, I think they're talented enough to do that.
It surprised you that anybody didn't leave this room.
Yes. To be quite honest, it definitely did. Because I love to see players bet on themselves, but I'm telling you right now, Jones and Dupree are not coming here to sit this year. And they are ultra talented. Mm-hmm. Especially Dupree, who is a guy who I think his skill set is something that I could see Longo going, we're going to find a package for you, which is going to steal some reps because he is probably the most electric player that they have in that group, I guess, other than Nate White, but Nate White's not really, he has less weight on him. He's like where Dupree is now. He'll probably be there in a year if he can get there. And I don't know if he's got necessarily the same level of athleticism. There's just some freaky things that we've seen from him that, like, there's a couple of catches that he's made that I'm like, I don't think there's another back on the roster that can do this.
There haven't been many backs in our rosters in the last couple of years that could probably do that. A couple stand out.
You're probably looking at White and maybe like Calhoun. Those are like probably the only two guys that you're seeing that type of.
Or Darrion. Darrion can make those type of catches. I think people.
There's one particular catch that I'm thinking about that I don't know if Darrion can make, but Darrion is an NFL dude, so he can play.
Those freshmen are super impressive. And I totally agree with you. I want to ask here: is there one guy that people are sleeping on a little too much? I think it's honestly, I kind of think it's Chez Mellusi, just because of the injury history. But is there a guy for you that people are a little too low
on? The more we hear about him, possibly Yacamelli. I think that I had written him out as somebody who I thought was going to end up transferring. By all accounts, it sounds like he actually had a pretty good spring, and he might be a guy that can actually legitimately steal that third spot if he continues to show that he can be productive if he goes out there. Now, I like him. I don't think he has some of the natural, like, instincts and gifts that the other two guys have. Like, there's something to be said for the level of play that Dilin Jones and Dupree played in terms of when they were coming up. Their skill level showed. Like, they were playing in, like, especially Jones was playing against some legit high-end high school teams. Dupree played against some pretty good teams in Chicago.
Yep.
And he only played like half the games. Like, he could have put up like us playing college football on rookie level running back with him if he had played the entire season. Like, we're talking 2,500 yards and probably like 800 yards receiving kind of stuff. Like, it would have been just disgusting had he played full games.
Yeah, let's not play now. Those boys are coming to play. Those are 2 4-star running backs who had monstrous prep careers, who received late offers and interest from places like Alabama, who are hoping to flip them. Those dudes are coming to play, and they're coming with bad intentions. And I talked to the head coaches of both. I had Dilin Jones on the show. Like, they'll be ready. Make no mistake about it. They'll be ready. But you look at a guy like Yacamelli, and I think that's a great one too. You're talking about a guy who's been on campus for several years. He's going to have an edge in experience. And he's a guy who's a good athlete. Like, that gets lost on Yacamelli a little bit too. High school testing numbers are really good for him. He's probably a 4'5" guy at about 6'2", 200 pounds. That's a really good athlete. I wish he had started at running back and not have been flip-flopped just for the experience points. But
the questions I have with him, I think we haven't seen enough of him for me to fully know whether it's there or not. I liked him as a high school player at running back. We talked about him before. I compared him to Shannon Brooks, who played for Minnesota. I thought they kind of ran similarly. I need to see the vision at the college level, whether that's going to play or not, because that to me is one of the things that separates the men from the boys when it comes to college running backs. The guys who can really see it and just find those holes, that's the hidden yardage in games. That's what Alabama and Ohio State and Michigan this last year are guys that have that innate feel for their space there. I need to go that way. and you end up breaking the extra 10 yards, or whether it's a third down where you find 2 extra yards that you need to get the first down, that a lot of running backs just run up the back of their offensive line and end up a yard short.
It's what a guy like Nakia Watson never had, for
Yes.
example. Not to pick on anybody.
Yeah,
a lot of
he carved us up when we played.
Yeah, it's true. Gosh almighty. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with running back superlatives with Justin. Who is he most excited to see out of this room on the field? Who do we think is most likely to be a first-round pick or a high draft pick out of this group? First-round picks with running backs are tough, but who is most likely to be a high NFL pick out of this group? That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at eBay Motors. Listen, you got to keep your ride or die alive, Justin. I don't know about you, but I care about my vehicle. I try to keep it safe. I go to eBay Motors for all my parts, right fit, right prices. And listen, there's times I'm not sure Justin's a people person. Like, I think he likes people, but
I think that's a fair criticism.
I don't know if he wants to go to the auto store and talk to the guy behind the counter for 20 minutes while they're going back and forth.
No, it's definitely not me.
That's probably not Justin. Justin just wants to shop for his auto parts on eBay Motors, take the shirt off, get comfortable, find the right part, get it delivered, and don't have to move a muscle while he's watching Melvin Gordon highlights. That is peak Justin right there, in my opinion. Finding the right parts at the right prices for the right fit. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Find the right parts for your ride or die. Keep it alive today. All right, Justin, I think I got you down that one. I don't think you're the guy that wants to go in and small talk.
I'm definitely not. I want to get in, get out, and get back home.
All right, let's talk running back superlatives. Ready? We'll take turns on this one.
Yep.
We'll trade it off. The first one is, who's the most and we're going to count the guys not in the room yet. So we're counting Dilin Jones, Darrion, Dupree in this, the entire running back room when it'll all be complete in fall. Who's the most athletic running back on the roster?
It's Dupree. To me, and I don't know if it's necessarily close. His combination of balance and burst and twitch is something we haven't seen here in a while. There's a couple of runs when you watch his high school footage where he bounces off like 3 guys, spins around, and it's like he should be ragged out to the ground, and he just kind of keeps going and ends up breaking a run. There are guys who are probably more like physically strong than him, but I think when you look at it from just raw athleticism, I think that he's probably the most in terms of balance, quickness, and burst.
Hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
You're right. Like, his contact balance is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he takes hits and he just finds a way to maintain the equilibrium and keep moving forward. He keeps the legs moving, which is a really underrated thing that a lot of running backs don't do. They kind of get stood up. I think it's probably Dupree too. I think you could make a case for Dilin, who's a little bigger. I think his cuts are a little
different
more
skill sets, but yeah.
He's a little more in between the tackles, but I think he makes really quick, simple movement in between the tackles and then accelerates really fast. A little more stocky, a little bigger, which also matters. But I think it's probably Dupree as well. Most likely to be a high NFL draft pick. I'll take this one to start. I think it's Dilin. I think Dilin fits the prototype. I don't think Chez is going to have the injury track record, even if he has a really good year to do that.
I don't think he'd be productive enough. Like he would need like a 1,600-yard season, and I still don't think that would be enough.
It's not, because there's too many injury red flags for an NFL team to spend a high pick on him, no matter what he does this year. Probably, I think it's Dilin. Dilin fits the prototype. Physical, runs between the tackles, can catch the ball, can pass protect. He has that type of frame. We got to see him do it, obviously, but I think he checks every box an NFL team's potentially looking for.
I agree.
That was an easy one. Highest? Well, I guess we kind of answered this one already. Let's go. Biggest reason for optimism for this room.
I just think that the floor of this group is pretty high, but I also think that there's very little. There's a lot of room for error. Meaning, if somebody gets injured or whatever, they have bodies that can go in there and be productive and potentially be really good. Like, it would not shock me if Dilin Jones got thrown out there, if say Chez for some reason gets injured again this year, goes out there and starts acting like Jonathan Taylor, where he bursts off for like 130 yards in the first game that he plays. And you're like, whoa, where did this come from? And then we'd be like, Ryan and I have been telling you, he's really good. But it would not shock us if he goes out into a game and does that, because he's that talent level. Is he a guy that I expect him to do that against, say, Bama? I don't know if he's that level yet. I think that's an experience, but I think there's a lot of teams on their schedule that I could see him going out there and having a game like that and not being shocked with it.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think that's a good one. For me, the biggest reason for optimism, I was thinking about this for a while, is I like the varying skill sets they've accumulated, right?
A
I think
little
Chez,
everything. Yep.
yeah, I think Chez is kind of your all around dude. We know who Chez is. Tawee gives you just a big physical load. Getting Ituka some of that. Where meanwhile, Cade Yacamelli is kind of a taller, different type of athlete, catch the ball. We know who Jackson Acker is. Dilin Jones and Dupree are different type of athletes. I just think you look in this room and you see guys who can catch the ball. You see guys who can be physical. You see guys who can get in space and isolate. You see guys who are versatile. I just love the collection of skill. I think they've done a really good job building out that room.
Yeah, I like it. I think what the best part of this is that Longo gets to look at this and decide what's the best fit for what he actually wants to do. He's not kind of stuck with being like, well, this is what I have. Like last year, in all honesty, I can tell you right now, he probably loved Braylon Allen, but I guarantee he looked at him and was like, this is not the perfect fit for what I want to be doing here. We saw the two guys that were a perfect fit for what he wanted at North Carolina, and they both averaged like 7+ yards a carry, or like one of them was like 6.8.
Yeah.
He wants guys that are capable of being shifty and can move in space, because when you have guys running all over the field, you want guys that can find that little bit of burst, spot to burst through and can make something happen. And that's not what we really had last year.
I really like something you said right there. The ability to find the right part for the right situation. I don't know exactly what you said, but it allows him. It's almost like when I'm cooking and I go to the pantry, I just have salt because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But a real cook goes in and they have parsley and salt and vinegar and all these different ingredients. Cumin. Is that a thing? Cumin?
Yes, it's a spice.
Anyway,
I'm literally never letting you cook if we hang out.
Garlic. I know that. Right. But my point is, you have all these different ingredients that you can use for the right situations. Whereas I think, to your point, last year, I agree, you really like Braylon Allen, but Braylon Allen's not the perfect piece for every situation. And I think he can mix and match better this year. So I think that's a great point on your end.
We talked about it with Dupree too. Like, he is legitimately a guy that I think that he can be his career here. And this is where people may look at him and the expectations of what he's going to be. I think people are not necessarily going to see it the right way. And you and I have talked about this in the background before, not as much on the show. I don't think people truly understand what Longo and them want him as. And I think you and I kind of do. Like, Dylan Jones is going to be the bell cow. Dupree's going to be the X factor. He's going to be the guy that they put linebackers in a bind, and they may both be on the field at the same time. And Dupree is going to be a nightmare to cover with a linebacker. And he's going to be a guy you probably get 12 to 15 carries to and try to get 5 catches to. And Dylan Jones is going to be the guy you want to get 20, 25 carries from.
I mean, in an ideal world, that's, I think, where it goes. Now, things never quite work out perfectly, but yeah, I'm there with you on that one. Biggest reason for concern. So we've been super high on a lot of things here. I'll start here. For me, it's outside of Chez, who gets hurt a lot, right? We've talked. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Outside of Chez, and I continue to say I think it's just freak bad luck, but it is what it is. He gets hurt a lot. I don't think there's any answers you can point to and say, I know for sure that dude's going to be a bell cow this year for us. I think Tawee maybe, but he wasn't at Oklahoma. He got passed up. So I think that's my biggest concern. If Chez goes down.
To be fair, Chez really wasn't here either. Did he ever have more than like 15 carries in a game?
No. Well, that's even more feeding into my point. I don't think you can look at anybody and say, I know for a fact we have a bell cow this year I can count on.
I think when I look at it, mine's similar to yours, and that's that if Chez goes down, we're short on experience at the position. And that's not something you want. There's going to be games on the schedule this year that people, I don't think, understand, that are going to be very high pressure. And that's where you have young players make mistakes. And you can't have it. Like, you have to have guys do things right. And having somebody make a mistake. What was the game where Bart Houston came in and threw the pass when there was an injury? Like, it was a train wreck, but that's a situation like that where you need somebody to be, your head has to be like locked in and ready to go in order to make things happen. And having a freshman or somebody who's, maybe 150 career reps isn't necessarily going to be as locked in or as savvy as somebody who's got 450, 500 carries in their career.
And those things show up in pass protection.
Yeah. Yeah, that too. Like, you misread something, a free runner comes at the quarterback in the most inopportune moment in the game. That's the type of stuff that happens.
That's a scoop and score waiting to happen. So, yeah, I think we're both kind of on the same page with the concern, the biggest one there. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and grade the room. What grade do you give it for this year, and what grade do you give it projecting out over the next couple of years with the talent in the room currently? We're going to do that next on Locked On Badgers, but first, a quick break for our friends of the show. Monopoly Go, the new twist on the classic board game. I know Justin's played Monopoly. We might get in a Monopoly Go game as well, but Justin gets pretty competitive. Not going to lie.
Just me?
That's fair. I do as well.
You lost a friend over it. I've never had that happen.
Yeah, you never played with CJ. Monopoly Go allows you to team up with your friends or team up against them, climb leaderboards, play a bunch of dynamic different boards at the same time. The classic game that America was built on. Now you can do it mobile. Head to the wherever you're going. Play Monopoly Go. Turn your smart car on, let it drive, and just play Monopoly Go. It's all good. We have technology now. Do not take that advice or hold me liable.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a liability waiver for Ryan.
Download it now at Google Play or on the App Store. That's Monopoly Go. Today's episode is also brought to you by our sponsor of the show, Yahoo Finance. Listen, I have things everywhere, and my brain is a Swiss cheese of trying to figure out where everything is. Yahoo Finance allows me to put all my investments, everything up on one dashboard so I can track everything. It is incredible, easy, simple. It makes my life easier, which is the goal. I mean, that's what you need in something to help you track your finance. That's what Yahoo is. They're a bedrock of the community, of the financial community. There's great editorial articles. I was reading one on real estate the other day on Yahoo Finance because I'm selling my house. I'm in that process. They are incredible, great advice. Behind every great investor is Yahoo Finance. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Justin, let's do this. Time for grades. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's grade it for this season. So with everybody that's going to be in fall camp, how would you grade the running back room for this season?
I give it a B+. I don't know if there's anybody that I can look at and say this guy's going to be an all-conference type player, but I think we're going to get quality play against everyone that we play this year. And I think that that's something that we haven't always been able to lean on in the past. So I actually think that there's a pretty good chance that we get a good B+ effort against pretty much everyone on the schedule this year.
I think I'm going to be a little lower than you. I'm going to go a B. I think there's a lot of people there we don't really know. In another year, I think that grade's going to be higher. I just think that there's question marks, and you never, as high as we both are on Jones and Dupree, and I think for a lot of the industry is high on them too. They're 4-star kids. By the way, Alabama's high on them too, right? Like this isn't like a hot take from the Bucky Report or Locked On, but freshmen still sometimes don't click, right? I just don't think we have again, going back to the previous segment, I don't think we have a guy you can look at and say, I know for sure he's going to be a really, really good player, rock solid the entire year. So I'm going to go B, which is still good. That's still a good position group. Grade it for the next couple of years with everybody in the room. I'm going to go B+. I know you're higher than me on this, but let me explain. I'm going to go B+, so I'm higher than my grade for this year. I still look back, if I wanted to give it an A, I look back at previous Badger running back rooms where we had a star, and we also had a guy on the roster that we had seen flashes of that I know is going to be good the next year. I just haven't seen that. Think back to like the rooms where Melvin Gordon was the third stringer, but you had seen flashes because you'd seen him.
I think that that's a tough question to answer, and the reason being is because Melvin Gordon was on the roster already at that point in time. Mm-hmm. So we're looking into the future, and yes, I mean, it's fair to have that argument on there. There is some projection that we have to take from here and based off the talent level that we've seen. Now, obviously, those are different circumstances. If you're projecting based off of the year when we had Melvin Gordon and James White and Corey Clement, like looking at that group, and you're like,
but well, that's an 8 room. That's my
they're
point.
all playing in that season. We get to see what they can do it at the college level. Yeah. That's kind of where we're stuck right now. And yeah, I guess you could bring it down and say it's probably fair to give it a B+, and the reason being is because none of them have done it at the college level. I will probably go and say, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll give them a B, but the ceiling there is an A. And we may look at the end of this season, we may look at it and be like, yeah, Jones and Dupree are legit, and Ituka doesn't look like he's far off. Like there's a chance you have two bell cows if Ituka's really good, between Jones and Ituka, and then you have Dupree as a guy who gets to go out there, be fresh, and just be a nightmare in matchups.
No, I'm right there with you. I think that grade could rise dramatically after this year. I need to see it.
Yeah, and that's fair. None of them have seen the field yet. I think it's very fair to say we need to see something before we just heap praise on you.
Well, and that's the running back preview, but I wanted to finish with this. I did my quarterbacks yesterday. I did my grades. I want to just ask you what your grades are. So we'll start with this season. I gave it a C+. I'm curious where you're at on if you had to grade the quarterback room for this year.
I give it a B, and I think I'm a little different than you in my perspective on this, and that's simply, look, if we went down through the quarterback rooms in the Big Ten, I think our quarterback room is one of the better rooms in the Big Ten. I think we legitimately have two guys that we're comfortable putting out there on the field that we think can win the game for us, and I think there's a lot of teams that would not have that.
That's a fair point.
Let's look at Penn State. After Alar, who are they putting out there? I don't even know who their backup is.
I don't either. Honestly, it's probably a 4-star guy.
Iowa's terrible. Minnesota's bad. Like, there's a lot of bad teams in quarterback rooms.
That's a really good point, right? That we think if you look at us in the context of the rest of the Big Ten, we probably do have one of their rooms. So what if I told you I would just give every Big Ten room a C+, C+ then?
That's probably more accurate is it really accurate from the national perspective though?
I'm not sure.
I guess that's what, like, if we went through the SEC, I guarantee it's probably top heavy there too. There's probably like 3-4 teams max that we look at and we're like, yeah, these are really good quarterback rooms. And there's probably a mishmash of a bunch of other teams that we're like, these could be good, they could be bad. I don't know if they have a second guy. Like, they may have one guy. I think we feel really comfortable with both Locke and TVD to be able to go out there and make plays. And I honestly, I'm pretty in lockstep with you with the projection that we have on Van Dyke. I think that your yardage might be a little low, and I say that simply because we got 2,800 yards this last year, and I think that the offense was kind of broken this last year, and we still got to that point. I think he's probably going to get, if the offense is good this year, we'll be over 3,000 yards passing. And I say just simply good. I don't mean great. I mean, if we get to what I've told you previously, if we can get to that 28 to 30 point range that we're fighting for during the season, I think he's over 3,000 yards. I think the running game actually goes up a little bit too. I think it's just that between the two, and we may find like an extra 600 yards of offense between running and passing.
I'm here for that. Yeah, it's not impossible. Like, to your point, it's not impossible. Give me a future grade for the quarterbacks. Looking at the room, obviously now you're factoring in Met Toyer, you're factoring in Landon Locke.
This would be so much simpler if we had somebody that was young that I felt really comfortable with having some experience. Like, if this is next year and say Mabry was starting, I'd feel better. Or if Locke was starting this year, I'd feel better about it. Because then it would be like, all right, well, I know we have the baseline of that. I'll give it a B. I'm very high on Mabry. I don't know if he wins it next year. I need to see what Locke really is if it's not. And I don't want, if Mabry does win it next year, I want it to be because he's that good. With Landon, I think that there's a lot to like there. I need to see the step up in his senior film in order to say that he's a legit guy. And I still kind of look at this and say, I would like the second quarterback in 25.
Yeah, I've heard you say it before.
I think that we're really thin, and I don't like how, like, you're looking at two guys next year. You're going to have Mabry, who's like a redshirt freshman, and you're going to have Locke. And then you have the crew, who's really hasn't been a part of anything yet. Yeah. And then Landon coming in. That's a really young quarterback room.
Oh, you're sleeping on Bastovich.
And I would like more lottery tickets, especially the quarterback position. Like, you never know. I'd rather have another 3-star in there or something, or a guy that has potential, and just say, maybe this guy clicks. He turns into a star.
Well, I'm all about getting more arms in the room, right? Because I think the more you get in, the more you can evaluate. The more scratch-off tickets you buy, the more you can scratch off.
I just want more transfers.
Yeah, you always run the risk, though, of if you bring one in, maybe you lose Landon.
Yeah.
And then you're in the same spot numbers-wise. Like, so you just have to – but you trust coaches to manage egos in the roster, and that's part of it. And that's – by the way, like, this is part of what players wanted. I'm just going to say, like, there's coaches are going to recruit over you now more easily now that you have the ability to move more freely.
You're making money, and now coaches are going to treat it like a business, and that's the way it is.
and that's what coaches have to do. So,
Yeah.
all right, he is Justin Joka over at Bucky Report, at Bucky Report. JJ also over at the Bucky Report. I am Ryan Herrings. Thank you for tuning in. As always, we're going to continue with this we'll do every position. And then we also have an Irrational Optimism podcast coming up with Curtis Holland. That'll be fun. We have Coach Gothier we're going to be breaking down film with new basketball transfers. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Plus we should have an interview of a 25 guy coming up as well. So a ton coming up as always. Go check out Justin's work as well on Wisconsin, and we'll talk later.